an expert panel joining me today, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing thoughts from colleagues. And this is one of the events on the road to December's summit on effective development cooperation, which I think many of us will see as an important milestone in improving the way that development's done and moving us towards the effective end of the spectrum of development partnerships. But I think we all know that there are some significant challenges for that agenda. And one of the biggest, perhaps one of the most important, I think, is on ownership. I think most of us that have worked in development see ownership as absolutely central, perhaps the most important principle of development partnerships. But I think there are signs that maybe that partnership is not as deep and effective as it should be. And some of my colleagues, for example, have looked at some of the major governments providing aid, and only a third of the finance provided as aid actually makes it to a local level in terms of an implementing government or an implementing NGO or other partner. So that doesn't feel like a true partnership. So this session, I think we'll get into some of that, and some of the things we'll be looking at are, why we need local actors and what role they play, but also how we can strengthen trust and improve the effectiveness of those partnerships. So that's what we'll get into. Let me first, though, pass us over to the co-chair of the GPEDC for some introductory remarks. Welcome, and thank you, Mr. Farid Aziz, who's Wing Chief and Additional Secretary at the Bangladesh Ministry of Finance. Over to you, Mr. Farid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jan Mitchell. This is Farid Aziz on behalf of His Excellency Finance Minister, Mr. Mustafa Kamal. I am presenting this welcome address. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to begin by thanking the global partnership of which we have been a part for 10 years now, as well as all of you for making this event happen. From me and also on behalf of the Honorable Minister, His Excellency Mr. Mustafa Kamal, who is not able to join us today. Bangladesh, having been included as an LDC in 1975, will now be graduating in a little over 4 years. Another landmark in the nation's progress to improve the lives of all Bangladeshis, starting with those farthest behind. But this is just the beginning of a new chapter, and one in which collective actions will only become more important. COVID-19 remains a huge challenge in Bangladesh, across the region, and in different parts of the world. And while we are beginning to emerge from the shadow of the pandemic, the recovery from it will yet define the decade of action in the lead up to 2030. War and supply chain issues are leaving the hungriest among us with still less, and the climate crisis will continue to reshape our world and our development efforts in the year to come. This is why we believe how we work together with our partners in a principle-based, evidence-led way is so important, and why we remain committed to collective action and the work of the partnership, from the recent case study on our digital trials and testing efforts. The Global Partnerships webinar series has consistently focused on the need for collective solutions and how we work together towards them, while pulling in different types of partners with events variously focusing on parliamentarians, LDCs, the role of businesses with the Business Call to Action Initiative, and multilateral organizations, to name a few. Today, we take a look at the local level and how country and local level actors can, by building on the effectiveness principles, work together in ways that enable and strengthen effective trust-based partnerships at all levels of our interventions. On behalf of my fellow co-chairs, I wish you all a fruitful meeting and a productive high-level political forum over the rest of this week. And we look forward to seeing you at the summit in December. Thanking you, thanks to all. Over to Jan Mitchell.
Great. Thank you for those introductory remarks, Mr. Farid. Let's now have some opening remarks from our distinguished high-level speaker, His Excellency, Mr. Paul Tassong Njokang, who's the Minister Delegate to the Ministry of Economy, Planning and Regional Development in Cameroon. And it'll be wonderful to hear from you, Your Excellency, on the role that local actors have played in your country.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you, Honorable Excellencies, panelists. It is with great honor that I speak at the opening of this exciting Global Partnership virtual site event, taking place alongside the 2022 United Nations High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. Permit me at the outset, on behalf of the government and the people of Cameroon, to thank the co-chairs of the Global Partnership for inviting our country to this crucial meeting, which is part of the preparation of the 2022 Summit on Effective Development Cooperation, scheduled for December this year in Geneva. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as the world seeks to build back better by recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and the ensuing economic shocks, it is vital to consolidate partnerships in line with SDG 17. Governments, parliamentarians, civil society, philanthropic organizations, private sector, and other parties must work together to harness the power of partnerships to achieve rapid but lasting and effective impact on increasingly complex and challenging contexts. Each actor must play a distinct and crucial role in building resilient communities and targeting the most deprived people. From the perspective of our country, Cameroon, since the Busan High-Level Forum on Global Partnerships, we have undertaken various actions on the effectiveness of partnerships with the support of our development partners in order to promote the implementation of our long-term vision, as well as our national and sectorial strategies to accelerate the achievement of SDGs. A series of consultations have been held with various development stakeholders throughout the voluntary National Review and Action Dialogue to assess the effectiveness of cooperation across all sectors of the national economy in order to link sectoral issues to national development priorities. Furthermore, in order to promote more inclusive multi-stakeholder partnerships, Cameroon has put in place frameworks for monitoring the effectiveness of development partnerships between the government and its technical and financial partners, the private sector, civil society, and particularly the diaspora, with the aim of strengthening collaboration with these different actors at the national level. These frameworks include, amongst others, multi-partner committee, which brings together the government and all its development partners, the Cameroon Business Forum with the private sector, sectoral partnership platforms, structured political dialogue with the United Nations system and the European Union particularly, the public finance platform, the civil society platform, the diaspora forum, the Cameroon Youth Promotion Platform, and the Cameroon Volunteering Actors Platform. In addition, decentralized territorial communities and civil society organizations have undertaken the development of the voluntary national reviews at the local level. This is the case of the major urban centers, who together with civil society and the actors of volunteering work to popularize the monitoring of SDGs at the community level. The results of these reviews have been taken into account in Cameroon's comprehensive and inclusive report, which will be presented next Friday at the high-level political forum on SDGs. With regards to public-private partnerships, Cameroon has made significant effort in mobilizing financing, especially for energy infrastructure projects. On the social sector, we are closing a public-private partnership financing for the establishment of a universal health coverage system in our country. Our 2020-2030 National Development Strategy favors public-private partnerships and project finance for their low debt generating capacity. Cameroon has completed the setting up of all the institutions provided for in its constitution. Decentralization is therefore effective. The central government supporting the decentralized territorial communities in the design of regional development plans and council development plans. All of this in synergy with our technical and financial partners. Ladies and gentlemen, the spontaneity and speed with which the development partners community at the national and international levels reacted to the COVID-19 crisis shows that with a little will, respect for the commitments made, and flexible procedures and financing conditions, we will manage to respond more effectively to the challenges of sustainable development faced by our times. This is why Cameroon encourages developed countries whose contribution to official development assistance still represents less than 0.7% of their gross national income to greater commitment. We also invite private partners to show more solidarity with the most vulnerable populations on the planet and to pay more attention to mixed financing for the realization of investments that have positive impact on social development and which pollute the atmosphere less, so that no one is left behind. It is on this note that I would like to end my opening remarks while wishing all of us fruitful discussions and exchanges on the part of the panelists during this virtual site event of the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation. I want to thank you for your kind attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We appreciate the encouragement there and the focus on trusted development partnerships. And I think the examples of monitoring being used to strengthen that trust and the progress that you've made on the voluntary national reviews is impressive. And I look forward to seeing the publication of the reports next Friday. And I think we've also heard the calls there to think about the most vulnerable, the wider climate impacts of activity, private actors helping the most vulnerable, and the need for more financial support. So those messages are very clear. Thank you. Let me now turn to our first panelist, His Excellency Ambassador Aubrey Webson, who is the chair of Alliance of Small Island States. And I guess, of course, we know that the small island states face unique challenges, and it'll be great to hear from you how the effectiveness principles are important for small island states and how they apply.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Very clearly.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me thank the Global Partnership for bringing this together. I think this is an opportunity to have a discussion on true partnership at a very critical time. So we thank you for this opportunity. The circumstances the world is currently dealing with reinforces the need for greater collective action. The ravages of climate change, the COVID-19 pandemic, the socioeconomic consequences that has brought upon many countries, particularly small states, the continued war in Ukraine, all highlights the need for effective and true-based partnerships. We must ensure that the existing commitments made towards the Sustainable Development Goals, especially those that addresses sorry, my pages got confused here, the needs of the most vulnerable countries are maintained. Additionally, my friends, we must ensure that the means of implementation that is needed to support developing countries, particularly so small states, are not reversed. We must build back better, reorienting towards a more equitable and sustainable agenda, strengthened international cooperation in order to help fully implement the social, economic, and environmental pillars of the Sustainable Development 2020 agenda. As you know, as the chair said, I represent a group of countries, the Alliance of Small Island States, that are dependent on effective and durable partnerships. And the Samoa Pathway, to which we all subscribe, is built on the foundation of partnerships. We have witnessed and fruitful results of partnerships over the past several years that takes into account national circumstances and national dimensions, and also regional collaboration. Not all partnerships are applicable to all countries. Therefore, partnerships should be tailored, focused, tried, and tempered. There are some good examples of effective partnerships, and of course, we all can count some that are not so good. My point here is, friends, that effective cooperation must entail country ownership. This means that the country is leading in the development and execution of the partnership program. Partnership must also be flexible. Flexibility is important as it allows our small states to readjust or reprioritize the partnership based on direct shocks that we may be experiencing at a particular time. Only 2 days ago, the Alliance of Small Island States on Monday gave out its first award on the SIDS Day of the HLPF, its first award for partnerships. This is a project we launched last year where we were awarding true partnerships with small island states in the 3 main pillars of the sustainable development. In the economic space, we gave the award first to the World Bank for their collaboration in the blue economy in the Caribbean with many of the partners, with the islands of the Caribbean and the OECS in particular. In the environmental space, we gave the Lighthouse Award. We gave the award to the Lighthouse for a partnership again throughout with AOSIS for their collaboration and their effort. And in the social space, we gave the partnership to we gave the award to the government of Italy for their efforts in collaborating for many years now on a fellowship program in training young diplomats and bringing through the next generation of diplomats in environment, oceans, and sustainable development with the Alliance of Small Island States. My own country, Antigua and Barbuda, has built a strong partnership with OSF. In looking at a debt swap initiative as a model that can be expanded to the other OECS countries in which we all and in the Eastern Caribbean subscribe to. Given those examples I have just provided, a key challenge for enabling effective partnership is knowing the right set of stakeholders to engage with and to be specific and to deal with the challenges. In Antigua and Barbuda case, we got it right here. In the Alliance of Small Island case, we got it right with those partners to whom I just noted. And AOSIS, the Alliance, will continue to monitor this closely. Partnerships can support implementation in multiple ways. And I will close here by saying to you, by giving you two very quick examples or points in this regard. Firstly, partnerships must help to bridge the ambition gap where national policies are short or lacking, with either because of capacity or because of sufficient information. And we know there's a capacity deficit in many of the small islands. Secondly, international partnerships involving transitional actors are a way to access means of implementation where domestic government resources may be short, and we know that that is the case in many small islands. And we, for instance, are working at AOSIS with OECD DAC to come to finalize an agreed outcome document that will improve aid effectiveness for small island developing states and thus be a tool in helping to strengthen partnerships. I thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I trust this gives some examples of the work that the Alliance of Small Island States is taking on in this realm. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And there was some, first, I mean, thank you for reminding us about the context that we're operating in here and the need to balance or to maintain existing commitments, as you put it, but to do that in the context of COVID, war in Ukraine, the global food price crisis, and climate as well. That these commitments must be flexible in the light of events. But also, I mean, the wonderful examples. I hadn't come across the awards before, but I think it makes absolute sense that that partner countries should be highlighting good practice from their development countries partners and doing that more. So I think that's a great example, and some of the more technical examples that you gave were also very interesting on the debt swap, which I know many partners are interested in at the moment. So some great ideas there. Let me now turn to Ms. Michelle Sumalas from USAID, and I know USAID have recently put, at least the leadership has put a new emphasis on localization, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from Ms. Michelle on this. She is the assistant to the administrator in the Bureau for Planning, Policy and Learning at USAID, and welcome, Michelle. Look forward to your contributions.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for this important event. I've done a lot of these kinds of events recently, and it is clear that locally led development and working closely with partners in new ways by donors and by everyone is really taking off, and we are very, very excited about that. As everybody knows, this is a concept that is not new at USAID. In fact, it's been a priority across the last 3 administrations, and we believe strongly that locally led development is effective development. What we are trying to do at USAID is actually learn from the work of the last 3 administrations and make sure that this effort announced by Administrator Samantha Power in November of 2021 is different, that we work differently, we think differently, and that we have different results. In November of 2021, she challenged the agency and all the staff within it, our mission staff, our Washington staff, and our Foreign Service national staff in the missions, to think about 2 different goals. And the first one is to commit to providing 25% of our funding directly to local organizations. And this is a very important goal, very focused on civil society organizations, but it also crosses all the work we do, from development to global health to humanitarian assistance. Her second goal is really what makes our effort this time different. And she has committed in the next decade that 50% of our work will be done through true partnerships with local entities at all points in our effort. So we will work with and hear and listen to local voices in our strategy development, whether that's a sectoral strategy, a country strategy, or a project strategy, and our project design and development, as well as in our evaluation processes, being evaluated not just by those who are served by the projects we work on, but also by evaluated by local institutions, be that universities or other think tanks. I just want to go back and just be clear that we are looking to shift shift leadership of our projects from Washington, from our missions, from US government employees to our local partners. We're looking to shift decision-making, implementation to local partners. And we believe by doing this, the results will be more sustained, more owned, and more effective. And that local organizations and institutions will be better able to use their own resources going forward to continue those. We want to also make sure that we're amplifying the voices of powerful change agents in countries. We want to provide the resources they need to implement locally led sustainable solutions while ensuring that funds are used appropriately, responsibly, and results are achieved. We're trying to balance the risk of working with local partners, which can be sometimes high with organizations that are learning how to use and work with US partners, but also make sure that they have the tools they need to fulfill our requirements. We don't want to set up local organizations to be in situations that they're not able to handle. So we are working on how we do capacity building around auditing, around following US government rules, and about changing our own rules to better meet local partners' needs. That is a new part of this effort. We want to also make sure that all this work is done in alignment with the principles of effective development cooperation, ensuring we maximize ownership and results, inclusivity, transparency, and accountability at every level. We've been very happy to be talking to the Global Partnership about how this can be worked into the conference and the partnership meeting at the end of the year. We are doing this kind of work at USAID, but we're also trying to learn about how to do it differently. Our PEPFAR program, which looks at HIV/AIDS, has been pushing this agenda, and we've learned when I was in Kenya last month that more than 85% of US funding in Kenya for PEPFAR is channeled through local organizations. We saw the effectiveness principles in practice, and we saw the powerful trust bonds and ownership between the members of the community, 3 young women who had been mentored through the project, USAID, local government, and all those in the community. We also have some very targeted programs that work on this issue from our Local Works program, which has been in place for probably over a decade, works with local partners across the world to make sure that their issues can be raised up and that development work can be done in a sustainable and practical way. In particular, we've been working in Bangladesh with an organization that is working with all of the refugees in Cox's Bazar who are looking to rehabilitate their land and their landscape and build alternative livelihoods for themselves. The last administration started what's called the New Partners Initiative, which we're very excited about. It designs funding opportunities that expand collaboration with organizations that have traditionally faced constraints to working with USAID. And that definitely includes local actors and organizations. This has been an important tool for us during the COVID pandemic, and we have reached more than 6.9 million people through risk communication and community engagement activities in Mali, Tanzania, Liberia, Senegal, and Brazil that look at our COVID-19 goals and doing that through local partners. These really are options and opportunities to work with local partners. We have also recently launched a new website, workwithusaid.gov, which really tries to provide organizations with the tools they need and with us with a list of new partners that can work with us. We will soon be releasing our vision and our new principles for localization in this administration. Our principles are country ownership, focus on results, inclusive development partnerships, transparency, and accountability. And we will be working with all of our missions and all of our partners to make sure that this is really built into every program that we do. It is not a side project, rather it is how we expect all of our missions and our staff to do their work. We've learned that doing this will require significant overall mindset and behavior shifts within USAID. So we are doing that by advancing and adapting our policy and programs to support these kinds of programs, these kinds of efforts. We are shifting power to local actors, ensuring they have a meaningful seat at the table. We want to integrate a diverse group of local voices and leadership into all aspects of our program. As I said, we will be channeling a larger portion of assistance directly to credible local partners. And we will also be serving as a public advocate. We have been working with other donors to try to bring this issue to the fore at the OECD DAC and other forums, at the UN, et cetera. We will be releasing a new local capacity strengthening policy in the next couple of weeks, or probably in the fall, which will outline these principles and provide guidelines for program management. So I just want to say thank you for having me and look forward to the conversation.
Great, thank you very much, Ms. Michelle, and thank you for reminding us about this being a long-standing priority for the administrations, but also acknowledging the step change that's needed and that you're attempting to make. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions when we come to the end of the panel, but it's great to see that concrete 25% commitment, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So let's shift gear a little bit and move on to a different perspective. So we haven't heard so far from a local government perspective, and we have here Urbanonitz, who's from the United Cities and local governments. Thank you for being with us, Barry. How do you see the trends and the challenges for local governments?
Well, thank you very much, Ian, and Excellencies, GPEDC colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation to join you today in this virtual gathering on the sidelines of the 2022 High-Level Political Forum, the first in-person gathering in New York here in terms of the HLPF since 2019. It's indeed my pleasure to join you today on behalf of UCLG, together with my colleague Jean-Baptiste Buffet, bringing the voice of the Global Task Force on Local and Regional Governments to today's important gathering. Esteemed colleagues, decentralized cooperation has evolved over the last decade. It has become a cooperation model that involves a more complex set of relationships between local government counterparts, partners, and peers from everywhere in the world, including municipal networks and associations. It's not anymore only about donors and recipients in a traditional aid perspective, in which the rich North is helping the poor South. In fact, the development of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation, North-South-South models, has brought new approaches, new actors, and has enriched development cooperation. Those new practices have emerged to respond to the need to catalyze lessons, good examples, and to find more adapted solutions in regions where urbanization is intensifying, particularly in the Global South. Hence, decentralized cooperation is becoming increasingly understood as a diverse model of cooperation, transcending traditional aid paradigms. In past years, local and regional governments and local government associations have gained a stronger experience in designing and delivering effective and sustainable capacity-building initiatives using various modalities and approaches. Those initiatives have started to include more projects to respond to humanitarian crises and conflicts. Decentralized cooperation also benefits from new monitoring tools and from solid, forward-thinking knowledge on the challenges affecting cities and countries. Recently, the digital turn brought by the pandemic and other technological advances have created new and innovative ways of collaborating, sharing, and implementing decentralized cooperation initiatives. Colleagues, on behalf of the sector, our UCLG CIB working group, which focuses on decentralized cooperation, recently released its report on decentralized cooperation with several objectives which respond to contextual changes and to the evolution of decentralized cooperation, calling for local and regional governments and their associations to be more recognized, engaged, and enabled as strategic actors and key partners. I'd like to summarize these objectives and recommendations in three key areas. First, push for more recognition and with real means for local and regional governments to address global challenges. The urgent and intensifying nature of global challenges, rapid urbanization in several countries, as well as opportunities and innovation inherent at the local and regional level, imply an ever-growing responsibility for local and regional actors, and this has been recognized in both the Agenda 2030 and other global agendas. Yet the importance of supporting LRGs and LGAs as development actors is often overlooked by still too many organizations, agencies, and national governments. In fact, LRGs continue to face strained financial and personnel capacities, lack of recognition and autonomy, and re-centralization setbacks. When this role is recognized, it frequently doesn't translate into a real engagement and allocation or resources for the implementation of action plans. We, local and regional governments, must continuously ensure that we're recognized as critical orders of government to address global development challenges. Our involvement in policy dialogues must evolve into real partnerships and tangible allocation of resources when it is time to implement policies and programs. We and our associations must be considered strategic implementation actors and have a formal seat at the table along with national governments when concrete actions are decided and taken. In this regard, to push for a recognition of our role as development actors with real means concretely, we'll multiply our advocacy efforts and continue speaking with one united voice, particularly through our global task force, call for the establishment of more formal and permanent seats at global, regional, and national tables, press national governments to recognize LRGs and local government associations as development actors, including in their COVID-19 response and recovery strategies, and will urge for multilateral and bilateral development funders to make decentralization, local governments, and democracy, local service delivery, and local government association capacity building clear thematic focuses. Secondly, we're calling to make decentralized cooperation a fully recognized and resource development cooperation approach. Increasingly, decentralized cooperation is proving to be the best way for local government practitioners to discuss common problems, support capacity building, arrive at concrete sustainable development solutions through reciprocity and mutual understanding. Yet awareness building continues to be necessary. More elected officials have to see the value of decentralized cooperations. Local and regional governments have to be given more resources and legislative authority to get involved. Decentralized cooperation should be understood as a mechanism that can adapt to support local governments facing humanitarian crises, conflicts, or post-conflict. Traditionally, accountability frameworks that only focus on donor partners from the north should be looked at differently, and local and regional governments shouldn't be competing like other service providers for development funding. We, local and regional governments, need to build more awareness that decentralized cooperation is an essential and effective approach to concretely add value to bilateral and multilateral development assistance. And thirdly, we must make decentralized cooperation more effective, professional, and innovative. Local and regional governments and their associations have gained a strong experience in designing and delivering effective and sustainable capacity building for local and regional governments, including new triangular and south-south models and technological innovations. Yet decentralized cooperation must become more effective. It should be less fragmented, better aligned and coordinated, more impactful, and directed at highly urbanizing countries and global issues, including with local and regional governments in countries in conflict or post-conflict situations. There is a need for more comprehensive data on decentralized cooperation investments and results. Cross-cutting issues like gender equality or youth engagement should be better addressed. We, local and regional governments, must strategically focus our decentralized cooperation initiatives on the global challenges that matter urgently now and for the future. We should better coordinate amongst ourselves and with other agencies to create synergies and increase the impact of our decentralized cooperation. We need to continue investing in knowledge, result monitoring and accountability, innovative approaches, and complete our digital turn to remain efficient and agile in an ever-changing global context. Thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Mayor Berry. And I thought in your remarks, it was good to be reminded of the importance of the digital angle that we've discovered, particularly during COVID, and the possibilities for collaboration. And I also appreciate in your remarks the focus on your own organization and what it needs to do to become more effective as a partner. I can I can see in the comments there's been a request to share the report in the working group findings. So perhaps you could add that link, and it will be great to come back to that in the questions as well. So thank you. So the other important actors here, of course, are philanthropists, and we're lucky to have Miss Nadia Hernandez, the director of Wings here. And I think if I understand correctly, Miss Nadia, you'll help us a little bit on thinking about what maybe isn't effective, as well as helping us with what is.
Exactly. Thank you very much. And just to precise, my name is Nadia Hernandez, and I'm programs director at Wings. And for those of you that are not familiar with, Wings is a global organization of and a network of organizations developing philanthropy in different parts of the world. We have 190 members in 58 countries. And thank you very much for the opportunity of being here. I have enjoyed a lot listening to the previous panelists on their own views on how we can be better at strengthening effective trust-based partnerships. And what I would like to share with you today is how to make sure that philanthropy is part of those partnerships at the country level. So first of all, as our moderator was asking, there is a lot to think about the challenges. Most of us probably know that philanthropy is not a very active on effective development cooperation, or it hasn't been as active as it could be. And the question is why? From our perspective at Wings, there are like at least three reasons on why philanthropy is facing challenges to engage in effective development cooperation and being part of multi-stakeholder partnerships. The first one are like challenges that we share with our colleagues from civil society organizations, and are challenges to the enabling environment. So we are pretty much aware that according to recent data from the International Center for Nonprofit Law, 94 countries propose more than 269 legislative initiatives between 2013 and 2019. 67% of them were restrictive to philanthropy. We also have seen recent data from the Global Philanthropy Environment Index from the Lady School of Philanthropy from Indiana University, and 1/3 of the 91 economies that they look at 2022 have faced also shrinking space for philanthropy. What is this? Those are like the restrictions for philanthropy to exist, as simple to register an organization, to operate. So for instance, challenges to send and receive money across borders, but also the challenges that are connected to like the perception from regular citizens, from civil society, about civil society and philanthropy. As you know, and probably have seen in different countries, some authorities and governments don't see philanthropy with good eyes. So these challenges around like enabling environment are hindering the contribution and the huge potential that philanthropy has to be a relevant actor on effective development cooperation. So this is what we could say it's an external challenge, but there is also an internal challenge, and it's the fact that infrastructure organizations, those organizations that are working to grow local giving, to increase the capacity and effectiveness of philanthropy organizations, to develop data, to encourage collaboration about philanthropy players, and dialogue with other development actors. You can think this about like the networks, the academic centers, like that are specialized on philanthropy, but also the thematic networks, like philanthropy. These organizations are lacking support and capacity, and especially those in like parts of the world like Africa, Asia Pacific, and Latin America are receiving only 14% of the resources that the ecosystem has to develop its own organizations. And this means that like these actors that are working towards strengthening philanthropy are having a lot of issues to operate and really untap their own contribution, especially to develop domestic giving and to develop local philanthropy ecosystems. And local philanthropy ecosystems are those structures that help the field are essential for effective development cooperation, for localization, and for the achievement of the SDGs. And together with these like two previous challenges, we also observed that for philanthropy to be part of these strong multi-stakeholder partnerships, it is important that foundations and other philanthropic actors remain reliable and accountable and transparent. And yet, philanthropy is still in progress to really fulfill the transparency standards around the world. In that sense, we know that there are multiple organizations committed to build that transparency and accountability, and to make sure that they build the path to embrace the effective development cooperation standards and principles, and to increase therefore effectiveness and impact. I would like to share with you, on the other hand, that despite the fact that these challenges exist and are very real, we have been observing towards the years strong collaboration of philanthropy with other actors. An excellent example is the SDG Philanthropy Partnership, the SDG Partnership Platform in Kenya, that started as the SDG Philanthropy Platform in Kenya, and then was enhanced to involve other actors. This is an excellent example on how by having philanthropy as one of the key partners, organizations can develop much more capacity for civil society at the local level. This SDG partnership platform has been built with the collaboration between government, multilateral agencies, private sector, civil society, and philanthropy, and has been working for several years by building strong ties to the domestic priorities, and by ensuring that every actor within the partnership understands what's their role and their added value. At the same time, we have observed in countries like other speakers highlight, like Brazil, India, Colombia, Indonesia, and Ghana, how different philanthropy actors are collaborating around the SDGs, and how they're also contributing in different ways. That could be by pooling funds between different actors, by deploying resources and knowledge in topics that probably are not immediately prioritized, but are extremely necessary. And by sharing those learnings, other actors are able to come to the table and enhance those collaborations. And also by bringing financial and non-financial resources to the implementation of different initiatives. So I will probably stop here, but if I have to choose one message from Wings to the participants in this event today, will be that philanthropy is an actor that has a huge potential, and of course there is a lot to learn and a lot of challenges to overcome, but there is also a lot to share. Foundations and other actors around the world are really in the front line as first respondents to the immediate emergencies, we saw in 2020 and the following months with the pandemic, but also in the long-term challenges that we have as climate change. So multiplying, sustaining, being effective, and really boosting the domestic ecosystems is at the core of the commitments from the field, and we are sure that by unlocking philanthropy's potential, we will unlock more effective and trust-based partnerships within countries. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Nadia. And yes, I guess I see the difficult balance to strike for philanthropies between being able to be nimble and innovative, but also needing that legitimacy within country and to integrate with the infrastructure, as you put it. That's very clear. So let me now move on to our second to last speaker, Ms. Josephine Joseph, who's the focal point for the India chapter in the CSO Partnership for Development Effectiveness. Welcome, Ms. Joseph, and you're going to talk to us about what the unique role of CSOs is in development effectiveness.
Thank you, Michael. I'm happy to be part of this panel and also to present my views on the role of CSOs in delivering effective development cooperation at this testing times, especially on the SDG, how to promote SDG, take it forward, the SDG 2030. First of all, I would like to bring out the challenges of India in the Indian context. Though we have all the challenges was presented by all other speakers. As you all know that India is a land of diversity, and also the CSOs are diverse in our culture, principles, orientation, and faith, everything. That itself is a challenge for us, So, and the other basic challenges that shrinking democratic space, which I'll come back to it, and there are a lot of regulatory atmosphere for for the CSOs. That's what I would like to bring into the notice of the audience. The regulators already some of the speakers were mentioning about that the shrinking what is that? Shrinking space for the CSOs to function in the country area. And here the regulators include the FCRA Regulation Act of 2020, the restriction in work as a CSO, restriction receiving foreign funds, and rigid operational procedures crippled with a lot of operational difficulties. In fact, we witnessed a lot of challenges during this COVID time. We were not able to, many of the CSO were not able to receive the, the resource from the other countries and to help to work with the poor. That's one of the major challenges we had. So here we would like to say that the state views the CSOs differently. The state doesn't see the CSOs as equally and as the partners of development. State has different views on CSOs. It doesn't partner with all the CSOs because it has its own agenda. Whoever support that ideology has been supported and then been looked into the national development projects, be it SDGs or whatever it is, whatever it is, social mission, whatever it is. So we don't have to say that national policy for voluntary sector, though we've been working on it for a long, but we could not make it as a policy, to draft as a, we have a drafting, a lot of CSO were in part of drafting it, but it hasn't materialized yet. And the thing is then, enough you can also see that a lot of fragmentation within the NGO sector because of the diversity, diverse nature of each one's belief and faith, whatever the orientation, things like. And again, you see now CPDE and other forums are there to promote the principles of development effectiveness, but then the understanding of the CSO sector on development effectiveness is very minimal. So was internalization of SDGs by the CSOs as well as the state. So that's one of the lacuna for us. And then this is some of the major thing we need to address in ourselves. Another thing is that shrinking democratic space the world over, but in India it is every day we are witnessing different sort of shrinking issues. So one is that implementation of stringent laws like your PS election laws and all those things, wherein the dissent voices are silenced through penalizing them. I think we all not have forgotten about the incident of institutional murder of Father Stan Sami, who's standing with the poor. And the latest is Tista for voicing against the state on the Gujarat Khanes, things like. So the victims are being again and again penalized. So the state doesn't want the activists or the development actors to voice out the issues, the development concerns. And again, the policy dilution and formulation of laws favoring corporate and private sector. It has been happening for the last past 7 to 8 years vehemently. So the EIA notification 2020, for example, the draft forest policy in 2018, all those things like. And then we are witnessing a kind of electoral autocracy and polarization of state based on caste and religion. And we don't have a real body to support the the development process of our state. So this is the context where that we need to promote the SDGs. And in fact, to say that the CSOs in India is of survival of CSOs in is at a stake. So this is the context we are to promote the SDG. And SDG clearly says that SDG 16 and 17, the involvement and the engagement of CSOs. Is it possible the state players to do it alone, or how it's going to implement? Does it without partnering with the CSOs, and how possibly to localizing SDGs, and is it practical to leave no one behind and build back better? These are the issues which need to address. And I see that the CSOs have a vital role to play. So I see that the 5 major role I see the CSOs need to play is the perceptual change of CSOs. Second is creating enabling environment. Third is partnership, as everybody was mentioning about that. Fourth is localizing SDGs, and fifth, practicing development effectiveness. So when it comes to perceptual change, the CSO should take SDG framework into socio-economic and climate justice framework with intersectionality lens. This is what I would like to suggest. And CSO need to challenge the present development paradigm, the neoliberalism to climate justice. And also to lobby with the major players, international policy makers, to commit to climate justice and address the contradictions, how the neoliberalism and support the climate justice approach. I think we need to address this issue because it has not been addressed. One side, we are promoting SDGs, and the other side, the neoliberalism is at the peak. So is a lot of contradiction. We need to address that as a apex body. And then, this is one issue which need to be really looked into that. And I also feel that creating enabling environment, which CPD is working on that, lobbying with the state government and other stakeholders to recognize the interesting role of CSOs and the right of our CSO participation in development and the decision making, to seek support of international players of DACs and OECD countries to intervene for enabling environment for funding and development. Coordinate with partner country CSOs, initiate dialogue with their state development projects for overseas funded projects, its viability and implications on climate justice. And CSO can also play a major role in activating the government to function as per the international obligations and national commitment, which we lack. So many a time it has been failed, though we commit, but we don't act upon it. Review of policies of detrimental to CSOs functioning. Example, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act and UAPA, NSA Act, etc. When it comes to partnership, the state, the CSO need to partner with the state, because here there were finance exams were given by the earlier speakers on how the local, the government is partnering and the other philanthropy organizations are partnering with the state. So here the CSO need to partner and the state need to partner, work in partnership with the with the state for working on the national policy on voluntary sector, redefine voluntary sector and its wider role in development effectiveness. Because here, even a school is also a voluntary organization, and a hospital a voluntary organization, a development organization also a voluntary organization. We need to redefine that, and we have to bring in dialogue with the parliamentarians and legislators, being part of and continue to being part of policy making. Alliance building is must, and we need to work more on alliance building with people's organization, especially on SD promotion of SDGs, and alliance building with different communities, and to advocate the CSO to allow and present alternative VNR process, because now we are not allowed, we don't present an alternate VNR report, so that we need that space to to present our VNR reports. So then partnering with private players for promoting innovations, funding, and social acceptance. And the point on localizing development, awareness building on SDGs, the state players and other stakeholders on development and the concept of effective development cooperation. I feel that the state also need to be educated on the concept of effective development cooperation, because the state is also not aware of that concepts. So I'm
Ms. Joseph, can I thank you for these comments? Could I ask you to bring them to a close?
Yeah, one minute. I just take one more minute. Sorry, I know I'm just taking one more time. So promoting practicing development effectiveness means the promoting and practicing development effectiveness principles, multi-stakeholders engagement with state, private partners, people's movement, and capacity building and partnering with other actors, involving monitoring framework for civil societies and private sector, and to partnering with the civil society very much. And then there are successful stories where, and I could share just one example for a minute, that Childline is one of the finest examples, successful stories of partnering with CSOs, where you could really show results. That in an organization where I am involved with, so in 3 months time, being partner of this organization, so the state could or that district could reduce, to address the child marriage up to 90%. So because there is a partnership with that, so this is what this kind of involvement partnership is essential. And also the CSO need to be part of monitoring and the state monitoring and partnering with the state in all the development efforts. And these are yeah, thank you so much. I'm sorry taking
thank you, Ms. for those detailed. I would definitely take away the challenges for effectiveness in terms of diversity and faith, the shrinking space for democratic space in many countries, but as there's also the polarization of politics in many places is making things harder. Now, I want to leave us some time for questions. So our last speaker is perhaps our most interesting speaker in a discussion about local actors. So Ms. Monica Nyiraga Haiwa, welcome, founder and executive director of Girl Up in Uganda. And can you tell us what you see as the trends and challenges for local actors in their role in development cooperation?
Thank you so much, moderator, and thank you all excellencies, and of course, fellow speakers and participants on this call, looking at the trends and challenges for local actors and their role in development cooperation. Number one, before we can even think about the role of local actors in development cooperation, I think we should think about trust-based partnerships. It's only through trust-based partnerships that we can, together achieve development cooperation, the outcomes of it globally. So in terms of sharing my own experiences on the ground in Uganda and being able to be a nonprofit leader, I would say that some of the challenges that I've experienced, that or we experience as local actors, is access, limited access to decision-making spaces where voices of local actors are actually heard. And I know that there is an intent to ensure that local actors are involved in these conversations, but you realize that the spaces are quite limited and not all local actors get the opportunities to be in these spaces, to be able to dialogue, to be able to challenge, to be able to share with other actors, because we know that for trust-based partnerships to make sense, it's important that the voices of the people themselves are present in these tables of conversation. The other challenge is looking at the structure of philanthropy. The philanthropic sector, in my opinion, is more transactional than trust-based. I know we intend to be really trust-based, but sometimes I think it's important to define what we mean by trust-based. So you find that for most of the partnerships that occur, there are so many conditions attached to the partnerships. There are so many conditions attached to the aid. And sometimes you're wondering whether this partnership is community-centered or resource-centered. Is the partnership based on resources or on the appreciation that communities have a critical role to play if, development is to happen, if sustainable development is really to occur? And in terms of looking at the second question around how can power, processes, and funding be approached differently, how can resources be channeled differently? And I already mentioned some of them. That's very important that as actors in this space, we approach partnerships from community. It should be community-driven other than resource-driven, because there's so much power in working with communities to be able to achieve, the change they want to see. COVID taught us that for most of the responses globally, there were community-driven organizations, local actors that were able to respond in a timely manner and be able to save lives. So it really shows you that we need to revise trust-based partnership and look at it more from a community angle and not just looking at it in terms of resources, because resources minus community doesn't give us the results that we are looking for. And I think also what else we need to reflect on as actors in this space is that whose voice are we talking about? Whose voice should be prioritized? And I think the voices of the people themselves that we seek to serve or we seek to work with should be at the front line. It's important that we get to a point where we just listen. We just listen to these local voices and just embrace that trust-based partnership and define it for all of us in this space. And what can also be done differently in terms of channeling resources is that sometimes in these partnerships, can we look at mistakes in partnerships as a learning other than as a source of accountability and punishment? Because as partnerships people get to work together, mistakes are bound to happen. There's so much that you learn along the way. Can we look at them more as lessons other than penalties of accountability that will not take us, any further? And of course, it's important that as actors in this space, we review conditions that are attached to aid, conditions that are attached to partnerships, so that we are able to bring on board communities at the same level. Yeah, that's it for me. I just wanted to be really brief and just say that definitely the conversation is ongoing. Definitely the voices of local actors is beginning to be appreciated. But of course, like I've shared, there are those areas that we need to strengthen. And just ending with an African quote that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And indeed, if we are to go together, we should trust each other. We should empathize with each other, and we should come into this space of development with open hearts to support each other, because all of us are critical in this space. All of us are important, and all of us can definitely work together to transform the world. Thank you very much.
Monica, thank you very much for that. And I mean, thank you also for throwing in some challenge there. I mean, I think to the philanthropic community on transactional relationships versus trusted ones. Also to government funders and partners on conditions attached to aid and learning lessons from mistakes. So those are perhaps rich topics for us to pick up in the course of the conversation. So we have 21 minutes. I'm going to finish this session promptly. So if you have a question for our panelists, please be brave and put your hand up. And also, please keep that question focused. And if there's one panelist you'd like to answer it, then let us know. I'm keeping my eye on the raised hands. Let me give you a moment, or you're going to get one of my questions, which will not be as good. So while we're waiting, Ms. Nadja, I wonder if you could pick up that theme that Monica finished with, Ms. Monica finished with on philanthropists and you touched on this in your own remarks, and the extent to which they can be more demanding and more results driven, and sometimes that's a trade-off with sort of the strength of trust and partnership. Is that something you recognise? I'm not suggesting that the Wings is a worst offender, but is that familiar? Do you think the philanthropic community is aware of that?
Thank you. And yes, I think that there has been a trend in philanthropy well, first of all, most of us understand philanthropy as grant making, but philanthropy is much more diverse than grant making. Individual giving is philanthropy, community philanthropy is philanthropy, and so on and so forth. But if we are talking about grant making, yes, of course, organizations have been for a long time demanding and have continued a practice that it's very top down. And inside of the sector, there is a movement that is Shift the Power movement, led by the Global Fund for Community Foundations, that it's actually oriented to transform those practices within philanthropy. And it's one of the main challenges and one of the themes that we are looking at Wings, how to transform philanthropy to be also more nimble and transparent internally, but to transform the power dynamics with grantees and those that are receiving philanthropic funds to implement their work. So I will say that from my perspective, I'll be not just hopeful, but also looking forward to seeing how these practices will be transformed and have been starting to be transformed due to the pandemic, but there is much more to be done.
Great, thank you so much. So we've got our first question in the comments box. So Victor Alejandro Galvez asks, how can we improve the communication tools around the world for sharing info, staying connected and working together for SDG commitments? What suggestions do you have, all panelists? So I don't know if there's someone on the panel that would be keen to speak to that. I know we had some examples in our conversation, but I think highlighting those again would be fine.
Hi, could you repeat the question?
Of course. How can we improve the communication tools around the world for sharing info, staying connected and working together on the SDG commitments? Suggestions. Well, while we're pausing, let me make one recommendation. I mean, the one thing we find very useful is the Global Partnerships monitoring survey, which puts together information by partner country and by development partner to see how they're performing in the eyes of the development partner. And we use that a great deal. That sometimes I think that the online platform, perhaps we can put the link in, is not always at the front of people's minds, but there's a lot of rich information there which I can recommend.
Maybe I'll share what we are thinking of. And
please do. And then I'll come to you, Mayor Berry.
Thank you. So I mentioned in the closing statement, sentence of my statement about the partnership we are developing with OECD and DAC as it relates to get to a better understanding of arrangements with small states. So working together to build that kind of communication, it will change, I guess, from sector to sector, but doing that building that kind of principled relationship that we both have input into. We both agree that this is the principles we want to work on for this type of activity would be one way of monitoring it and one way of making sure that there is some guiding principles that we do not just slip away from. On the other hand, within the Alliance of Small Island States, we also, working with some of the other UN agencies, we also have a monitoring process to look at partners and partnerships. And that's why we developed the award, so that we can monitor the numbers of partners, the type of partnerships, and we can give guidance in terms of of how these work, and more importantly, we can give incentives by the award for how these work. So those are the kind of things that we are putting in place, and it will obviously depend on the collaboration between the agencies and the different partners in the sectors.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. I'll come to Mayor Berry in a moment. I also would just like to pose a question in a moment to Sumilas that we got earlier in the chat, which was about how the localization agenda will play out in local country offices and how the 25% target will be assessed there. But I want to give you some warning of that while we hear from Mayor Berry about information sharing.
Thanks. Well, just very briefly, I mean, obviously, through the work of the GPDC, that's certainly, I think, been an effective mechanism to do that. Gatherings such as this and the HLPF in general has certainly been an opportunity. But I think as we look forward, we know that the UN is looking at hosting an SDG summit, likely, well, it will be next year. But in addition to that, there's talk of a summit for the future that will really start taking a comprehensive look at, how we build back better and build back differently going forward. And, it's my understanding that that is being contemplated for either next year or 2024. And so I think it'll be important that we ensure that this ends up being part of that thematic focus, because quite frankly it speaks to some of the most effective ways to implement the SDGs by localizing them at the grassroots level, ensuring that cities and regions together with civil society are at the forefront of much of this work.
Great, thank you. And there was a comment earlier that applies here, I think, which was just about the involvement of youth voices, which we don't have on this panel, without any offence to my esteemed panel colleagues. But maybe that can be a forum for those voices to be heard as well. Just before I come to Michelle, let me warn you about the next question, which I think is a good one. It's how do you accommodate different languages and communicating with non-English speaking communities, and maybe some of our panel can speak about that after we hear from Ms. Sumilas. But Sumilas, over to you on the question about the target in ambassadors and national contexts.
Thank you, Ian, for the question, and thanks for the panel. This has been a really interesting discussion, and all the different perspectives are important, and no offense taken at the reference to youth. There was a day that I was a youth, but no longer am, so that's okay. But we do believe at USA that the youth voice is very, very important. And so that is one of those that we look forward to bringing in. In terms of targets, we're trying to learn from past practices. I think an organization such as USAID and many of the institutions we're talking about here, people get very good at meeting targets, and they figure out how to turn themselves into pretzels to meet targets, how to read definitions and read metrics and get to different levels. And so what we're trying to do is we will be having individual discussions with each of our missions, leadership and staff, to talk about what is possible and feasible in their country, and where do they see themselves going in terms of meeting both the 25% metric as well as the 50% metric. We are not asking missions to go to 100% localization, because we believe that it really is an ecosystem in terms of how this assistance is provided. But we'll be having individual conversations, and then missions will be working with their country counterparts, both in civil society and government, to share those targets and to think about how they can be reached. I would also just say, in terms of the question you asked around communicating in local languages, one of the things that we are also doing is working on translating our calls for proposals into local languages and into other languages. And so that will be a process that will take time, of course. You can't just snap your fingers and make it happen across every country, but we have contracted with a group who's helping us think it through and helping us do it. So we hope in time that people will start to recognize that. Over.
Great, that's so interesting to hear, and some appreciation in the comment box there. In terms of the languages question, Minister and Yokang, I don't know if there's anything you want to add here. I'd like to give you some final comments before we finish up anyway. And Monica, of course, Swahili is widely spoken in Uganda. I don't know whether you've ever seen development initiatives that have sought to speak to audiences that only speak Swahili or other local languages. Perhaps Monica, I could come to you first on that, and then we'll come back to Minister Nyokang for an answer to that question and maybe some final remarks.
Thank you. Talking about languages, you find that so many actors in the development space have been able to recognize that for information and messages to be able to reach the target audience, it's important that language is part of the equation. And so many organizations have taken it up to address this issue by translating, whether it's posters, whether it's materials, into the local language. But of course, it is also a logistics issue and an issue that will take time for translations to happen in all languages. For Uganda, we have about over 54 languages. So you can imagine if you have programming in all the regions, in other parts of the country, translating this, but at least there is effort and recognition that not everyone speaks English. For our case in Uganda, which is the national language, not everyone speaks or understands English. So it's important that local languages come into play, but also the use or the engagement of local stakeholders in being able to translate, real-time translation when conversations are happening is something that also local actors have taken on. Thank you.
Thank you, and I guess that's something that technology can help with, although again, perhaps that's more limited to the main global languages. That's a great insight. Thank you. So let me warn the panelists that I'm going to ask the next question to. So before we come to the minister. So there's a question from Rahel asking about several speakers have mentioned that the rules and regulations have changed to enable partnerships, localization, and community-based development. But what does this mean concretely? I wonder if I might come to Ms. Joseph, if she's still on after the minister, to comment on that one, and anyone else that would like to. Minister, thank you for your patience. I'm sure we'd all very much welcome your insights on the questions about communication and any final remarks you'd like to leave us with.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I take particular note of the very important question on communication as a whole and the need to pay attention to a multi-language context or environment. For the case of Cameroon, we're a very special case. First, we are a bilingual country. Officially, we have two languages, English and French. And on the other side, we have more than 250 languages spoken across the country. This is indicative of the magnitude of the challenge of communication, of being able to take it down to the grassroots. I think one of the ways that this challenge could be met is to not only work with the civil society organizations and other NGOs at the national level, but equally encourage the creation of civil society, community-based organizations at the very local level. That makes it possible for the local people to be able to take ownership of whatever we're doing in terms of building partnerships to enhance development. Now, coming to maybe some final remarks as you wish, I'd like to start by appreciating all the panelists. I think it's been a wonderful 1.5 hours. I personally have learned a lot from the experiences of all of you. It's been wonderful for me to take part in this wonderful discussion. I want to conclude by saying that from our perspective, trust-based partnerships must, as much as possible, hinge very strongly on national development strategies. All partners must take full ownership in national development priorities, and their interventions or actions on the ground should be wrapped around the priorities established in the national development strategies. This is the only way for us to ensure absolute coherence in the work that we all do, which comes to put us all looking at the same direction, trying to achieve the same objectives. As much as possible, we think national development priorities should be homegrown. They should be established or at least conceived by local actors, and all other partners, be them technical or financial, should simply come in to enhance whatever is conceived, and together we will be able to ensure that the identification process of local priorities and their structuring permits us to attain the SDGs as a whole. And on that note, again, I want to appreciate all the panelists. I want to particularly appreciate our moderator, Ian, for the wonderful work done. I want to say bye-bye and a nice day to all of you, wherever you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for sticking with us and that very helpful reminder and encouragement to focus on national development strategies. So Ms. Joseph, I wonder if you could just very briefly tackle this last question, and then I will say some final words.
What is that again, the last question?
Oh, sorry, it was for Ms. Joseph, actually. I posed on, it was what the concretely on the ground needs to change to local partnerships.
I didn't get that, sorry.
Let me scroll back up to it. So actually, Minister, I was hoping that Ms. Joseph might respond to that one. Ms. Joseph, if you haven't picked that up, given we're so short on time, why don't we bring it to a close there? I mean, I've taken. I mean, it's been a hugely rich discussion. There's actually, I really appreciate the panelists coming with such concrete examples. I think sometimes you can have these sessions and they don't go beyond platitudes, but I think everyone has brought particular things that they're working on that could be useful to others, and I really appreciate that. And it's really I suppose that's my takeaway and call to action at a specific level as we move towards December and we think about our commitments is to focus on our own communities and organisations and see what they can bring. And I think the panelist has done that, from philanthropists to USAID to Ambassador Webson talking about what small island states can do themselves. So this is a partnership, and we need to change it to communities that we're in, because that's where we're most influential. And I also, I mean, I couldn't resist repeating Monica's wonderful phrase. I think it was yours, Miss Monica, of must go alone and or go far, but go together. So that's a great call to action to finish on. So thank you very much for UNDP for convening this panel, and thank you very much to the panelists for your very good interventions and time, and to the audience for the engagement and comments. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Bye-bye. Good job, Ian.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all for this opportunity. Thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful insights. Thank you. Nice meeting you. Bye.
Thanks, Ms. Joseph. Thanks, Ambassador. Thanks, Yumna.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Ian. Thank you, panelists. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Bye.